Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Six Path Weeb, and today we're jumping into part 3 of a series that's got everyone talking. What if the Sannin raised Naruko? This alternate timeline keeps twisting in unexpected ways, and in this part, things take an even deeper turn. Whether you're Team Jiraiya, rooting for Tsunade's influence, or curious about Orochimaru's role, this is where it all starts to unfold. Disclaimer. The content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's get into it. The Oto group gathered around Naruko as Anko calmly drew a pair of elegantly crafted kunai. Please leave, she requested firmly. Kakashi observed her, his gaze shifting briefly past her before resting on Naruko. I'd like a word with Naruko, he said evenly. That won't be happening, Anko replied without hesitation. Naruko had already heard from her mother and Rin about how Jonin Hatake once believed she should be removed as a child, simply because of the sealed spirit within her. I have nothing to discuss with you, Jonin Hatake, Naruko said coolly. She subtly flared her chakra in a unique signal, one she and Anko had developed as children when they faced overwhelming situations. While Anko was skilled, Kakashi had the Sharingan inherited from a former comrade, and they were still in Konoha territory. The pattern of her chakra flow caught Kakashi's attention. His visible eye locked onto her, and he raised his hand in peace. Calm down. I'm not here to cause harm. I'm not convinced. You once viewed my life as expendable, and during my last visit to Konoha, I faced more hostility than welcome, Naruko stated, voice unwavering. Gaara, standing beside her, cast a stern glance at Kakashi and uncorked his gourd. My friend has asked you to leave, he said with calm resolve. Tamari had already drawn her fans from her back, though she hadn't yet opened them. From behind, the Genin they had met earlier approached with concern. Tamari turned around. Stay back. This doesn't involve you, she warned firmly. That's our sensei. If you confront him, you confront us, Sasuke declared, his eyes now glowing with the distinctive Uchiha intensity. Tamari narrowed her eyes. Another Sharingan user with a dramatic hairstyle, she murmured. Gaara shifted his position, making sure he could keep both the Jonin ahead and the Genin behind in view. Don't interfere, he said calmly. Kakashi-sensei, are you alright? Sakura asked, her voice uncertain. I'm fine, Sakura, Kakashi replied as he cautiously took another step forward. You've been warned, Hatake, Anko reminded him, tone sharp. But Kakashi continued moving forward. Just as he drew near, Kimimaro arrived in a swift blur. You were specifically instructed to keep your distance from Naruko, Jonin Hatake, said the leader of the Sound Five with quiet authority. Kakashi was about to speak when Sasuke lunged at the Oto Genin. Sasuke, stop. Too late, Gaara, prepared for such an action, formed a protective arm of sand that intercepted the attack. He had already turned to the Genin group the moment Kimimaro had arrived. Moments later, Konoha's Anbu arrived. Release him, ordered a masked Anbu with a hawk motif. No, Gaara replied simply. He attacked the Otokage's heir, despite prior warnings. Kimimaro calmly looked at the Anbu squad. So these are the Anbu warriors I've heard about. Honestly, not quite as impressive as I expected. Kakashi spoke up. Captain, stand down. This is a misunderstanding. The Uchiha is in their custody, Hawk said. Sasuke overstepped and became involved in a situation he didn't understand. I'm confident our Oto allies will resolve this peacefully, Kakashi said, glancing at Gaara. Naruko placed a gentle hand on Gaara's shoulder. Return him, please. With careful control, Gaara released Sasuke, who landed near Sakura. She rushed to his side, yelling about how poorly he'd been treated and insisting that the Oto nin were fortunate he hadn't retaliated. We're returning to our hotel, Anko said, her voice composed. I'm afraid both you and the Jinchuriki will need to come with us, Hawk stated. On what grounds? Anko asked with a raised brow. Disturbing the peace and aggression toward a Konoha ninja. Naruko exhaled, clearly unimpressed. If I had truly meant to cause disruption, you'd be very sure of it. Stow it, Naruko, Anko muttered. We're the ones being provoked here. Regardless, the host of the tailed beast must come with us, Hawk insisted. I don't believe so, came a new voice. The Anbu turned, only to freeze upon seeing Orochimaru, Tsunade, and the Hokage standing nearby. Orochimaru looked at his former mentor. Some things never change. She's hardly even returned, and already there's prejudice. Tsunade walked past the Anbu and approached her daughter. You always find a way to attract trouble, don't you? She said with a small smile, ruffling Naruko's hair. Not my fault, Ka-san. Hatake keeps trying to speak with me despite being told no. Tsunade's eyes narrowed as she turned to glare at the Jonin. I told you to give her space, Kakashi. Kakashi simply shrugged. Kakashi, report to my office, Sarutobi ordered. Then he turned to the Anbu, raising his voice. Stand down. Now. Orochimaru, Tsunade. I apologize for this, the Hokage added. Will remain for the exams, old man, Tsunade said. But let me be crystal clear, any further aggression toward Naruko will result in a political incident. And she is not without allies. Orochimaru nodded. Suna, Iwa, and Kiri have all joined Oto in alliance. Kimimaro, Tsunade called. He bowed respectfully. There is no need to thank me, Lady Tsunade. He turned to Naruko and gave her a respectful nod. None shall bring you harm. Sarutobi looked at the coalition of villages supporting Oto and realized the severity of the situation. The council's demand for Naruko's transfer to Konoha would only make matters worse. The morning of the exams. The day of the Chunin exams arrived, and Kakashi Hatake had already been escorted off the hotel property multiple times. Though he gave no clear reason, it was evident he wished to speak with Naruko privately. As if that's going to happen, Anko remarked under her breath. The only minor disturbance was Anko discovering Kin and Haku peacefully curled up beside Naruko that morning. She had completely ignored Gaara and his plush toy glaring at her for yelling so early, and she barely avoided a flurry of senbone needles from the two girls before she managed to separate them by pulling them aside by the ears. Stay away from my sister, she had scolded them, still visibly protective. Naruko was understandably anxious as they approached the academy. Her mother and Kimimaro flanked the team protectively, ensuring their safety after the recent incident. Tsunade's frustration had boiled over earlier when a courier arrived with a scroll demanding Naruko's transfer. The Hokage's office later received reports that the courier would be on extended medical leave due to unrelated injuries. Relax, brat, Tsunade said as she noticed Naruko's nerves. Konoha never changes its exam structure. First part's mental, second is survival-based, and the third is a one-on-one tournament. Sounds ridiculous, Naruko mumbled. Want to wait another 6 months and take it in Iwa? Tsunade teased with a hint of hope. Nope. Already waited so Gaara and I could form a team with Kin-chan, Naruko replied confidently. Kin blushed at the mention. You've got your pipes? Tsunade asked. Yes, Mom. Don't take that tone with me, young lady. Do you all have your supplies sealed? Yes, ma'am, the trio answered in unison. Gaara, your instrument? Yes, Lady Tsunade, he confirmed, indicating the scroll on his belt. Kin? I've got my flute and the medical kits you prepared, Lady Tsunade. You'd think you were the one taking the exam, Princess, Jiraiya teased as he caught up. I'm worried, she admitted. Between the council's pressure and Hatake's persistence. It'll be fine, Jiraiya reassured her. Hey, brat. What is it, Sannin? Naruko asked. Don't call me that, he sighed. You have the scroll, right? Yes. Good. Be careful in there. He fell back to walk with his own team. Kabuto, he whispered. Keep watch. I know Anko's team is doing the same, but with the council pushing their agenda. You think something might happen during the second phase? Kabuto asked quietly. Yes. Also, keep tabs on Kakashi. He's been shadowing Naruko since our arrival. His team has the Uchiha. Understood. Orders? Jiraiya passed a sealed scroll to Kabuto. Neutralize the Sharingan, non-violently, or contain him if necessary. As you and the Otokage command, Lord Jiraiya, Kabuto replied, adjusting his glasses. Kankuro and Dosu nodded solemnly, prepared to act if needed. You're not deceiving anyone. Drop the illusion and move aside, a voice called as someone entered the building. Naruko shook her head and sighed. So gullible, she muttered under her breath. What did you say? The pink-haired girl snapped as she turned around. I said your teammate fell for a basic genjutsu. It was designed to screen out the unprepared, Naruko replied calmly. Sasuke turned, now facing the same group of teens they'd seen earlier. Fight me, he demanded abruptly. Naruko and her team didn't even pause, they simply walked past him. Frustrated at being ignored, Sasuke reached out to grab Naruko's arm, but another hand intercepted his, gripping his wrist firmly. "You shall not lay a hand on Lady Naruko," said the young man dressed in pristine white, with a black trench coat and a red headband that held back his spiky brown hair. "Ryu, don't waste your energy on the Konoha, Tamari stated coolly. "Save it for the second phase of the exam." Ryu released Sasuke's wrist with a sharp flick, causing the Uchiha to stumble back. As the Otogakure teams ascended the stairs, the Konoha glared after them. "Sasuke-kun?" Sakura asked cautiously while their third teammate stood frozen, eyes wide. Unseen by many, a pair of bushy eyebrows above watched the Uchiha carefully, silently forming an opinion. Naruko scanned the room, taking in the numerous teams assembled. So many unfamiliar faces. She frowned when she spotted three distinctive individuals, one in a black and blue mask, another in orange and black, and the third wearing a skull-themed mask. "Naruko?" Kin appeared beside her. "What's wrong?" "Scorpion and Sub-Zero are here," Naruko said quietly, nodding toward the trio. "Not sure about the one with the skull mask. But we need to steer clear of them." Kin nodded in agreement, while Naruko continued observing the strangers. It's been a few years. She reflected. Flashback. A few years earlier, Naruko and Anko had escaped to a nearby riverside village, eluding their ever-watchful caretakers. Their family had been heavily involved in establishing Otogakure, leaving the children under constant supervision, something they both found stifling. "Are you sure we're okay being here?" Anko asked, her voice quieter than usual. Though younger, Naruko often took the lead, which others found surprising. Still, they always supported each other. "Yeah. We're not in Suna. Just downriver a bit," Naruko said, adjusting her blue outfit that resembled Jiraiya's style, minus the horned forehead protector. Anko shook her head. "If we get grounded, it's your fault." Sure. Let's check out the ships. They say this river connects straight to the ocean." "Weren't we here for the festival?" "Later. But there should already be food stalls open." "And how exactly do you know this?" Anko asked suspiciously. "A classmate mentioned it. He's coming tonight with his dad." "And his name?" Anko inquired, catching the evasiveness in Naruko's tone. Probably someone you don't know." There it is, Anko thought. Someone Mom warned her about. "Do you trust him?" "Yeah. Kind of." As they reached the village, Anko sighed. "Do you think Mom would trust him?" Naruko flinched slightly. "Maybe?" "You're a terrible liar," Anko said, making Naruko pause. "So what? I'm tired of being stuck in one place. Remember when we used to move around? We never stayed anywhere long. You know why we've settled here." "Doesn't mean I have to like it," Naruko said, stomping ahead. 10 minutes later, Anko caught up, only to freeze. Standing before Naruko was a masked figure she had hoped never to see again. "Natas," she whispered, drawing a kunai and lunging. But he didn't even turn. He calmly caught her by the front of her shirt. Now, little serpent. I'm not here to cause trouble," Natas said, looking at Naruko. "You've grown." "It happens," Naruko replied coolly, glancing at the two figures beside him. "My companions, Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Once bitter enemies, now loyal warriors under my command," Natas explained. "Charming," Naruko replied tersely. "They are not of this world. Not yet. But in time, they will be reborn and serve loyally." Naruko's expression hardened. "I'm not going with you." "I didn't ask," Natas replied, unexpectedly calm. "This is merely a passing visit. You're not in danger from me today, Naruko." As he turned to leave, Scorpion and Sub-Zero moved behind him. They demonstrated their strength by stunning a man nearby. Sub-Zero froze him mid-movement, and Scorpion shattered the icy form with a swift move. "Flawless," Natas said simply as they boarded a boat with crimson sails and dragon designs. "We should head back," Naruko muttered. Now, back in the present, Naruko observed the same trio. They were younger, but unmistakably the same, with those empty, pale eyes. Her attention shifted to the Konoha as a familiar yell pierced the air. "Sasuke-kun." A blonde girl had leapt onto Sasuke's back while his pink-haired teammate shouted for her to get off. Naruko noticed bruising on Sasuke's face. He never learns, she thought as she rejoined Kin and Gaara. "I've alerted the others," Kin whispered. Kabuto's going to try drawing out some of the Konoha Junon. Naruko nodded but remained skeptical of Kabuto. Despite his impressive information cards, she never quite trusted him. We need to inform Anko Ne-chan. NATAS's soldiers are here. I don't recognize the one with the skull mask, but Scorpion and Sub-Zero are threats. Kin touched Naruko's arm. That Uchiha is staring at you again. Sasuke approached. Fight me, he demanded. No, Naruko replied, then turned to Kin. Do you think Ride of the Valkyries can be performed without string instruments? Stop ignoring me. Please leave, duck-haired one, Naruko said firmly. We're not Konoha shinobi, we don't tolerate arrogant displays. Sasuke lashed out, but Naruko reacted swiftly, sending him flying into the classroom's blackboard. The room fell silent. Try that again and you'll regret it, Naruko warned, lowering her leg. Anyway, about the second stanza, she continued calmly. You can't do that to Sasuke-kun. Sakura screamed, charging toward her. Before she could reach Naruko, several girls blocked her path. Temari, Haku, and Kin stood in front of Naruko, protective and unyielding. Move, Sakura shouted. Temari answered. You think we'll let you attack Naruko out of some misguided infatuation with that sulking boy? Think again, Pinky. He attacked Sasuke-kun. Sakura whined. No, Kin corrected. Your teammate tried to attack Naruko-sama. In Otogakur, that kind of behavior would earn a suspension, or worse. Haku added, and if you attack the heir to Otogakur. Temari smirked. Depending on Lord Orochimaru's mood, that could have serious consequences. That's only if Lady Tsunade or Master Jiraiya didn't deal with it first, Kin said matter-of-factly. Heir? Sakura blinked. Yes. Naruko is the daughter of former Konoha Sannin and heir to our village's founder. But she chooses to be treated as an equal, Kin explained. She's been disciplined more times than we can count, Temari added with a small grin. Sakura turned toward Haku, clearly recognizing her, though Haku didn't respond. Suddenly, smoke erupted at the front of the room, accompanied by a booming voice. Quiet down, all of you. As the smoke cleared, a tall man with a prominent facial scar, wearing a Konoha forehead protector and a long black coat, stood before them. Behind him were several Chunin exam proctors. I am Iviki Morino, your examiner for the first test of the Chunin selection exam, he announced with calm authority. Naruko glanced at the test in front of her, a bemused expression crossing her face. Ka-san was right, they never changed these questions, she thought with a soft sigh. Over the course of the next hour, Naruko began filling out the answers using the shorthand methods taught to her by Shizune and her mother. She quietly turned her paper over after completing it, making a clear decision not to assist others in unfairly obtaining answers. She noticed that a few fellow Konoha ninja were using unique techniques or inherited abilities to discreetly cheat. From the corner of her eye, she spotted the girl seated next to her, a fellow Konoha ninja with flowing indigo hair and pale lavender eyes. The girl occasionally glanced at Naruko, and when their eyes briefly met, Naruko offered a kind smile. Here we go again, she thought playfully, fully aware that her looks often drew attention. Her mother and aunt had mentioned it before, and they certainly hadn't spared her from the details of the growing up conversation, complete with diagrams and overly enthusiastic explanations. Naruko still chuckled at the memory of how embarrassed Uncle Orochi had become when asked to explain it. Turning a deep shade of red, he had quickly excused himself, suggesting she ask her mother instead. As the girl beside her continued sneaking glances, Naruko gave a quick wink, causing the other girl to blush and avert her gaze. Anko Ne-chan is probably going to want a sparring match after this, she mused with amusement. Elsewhere in the room, Haku, Rin, and Temari were seated toward the back. Each of them noticed the Hyuga girl's attention on Naruko and didn't seem too thrilled about it. All three exchanged subtle glances of concern, but Haku quickly devised a solution. I'll let Anko-sensei know there's someone paying a little too much attention to her younger sister, Haku thought calmly. She quietly created a reflective surface in her hand and slipped a small message through it before turning back to her own test. The team had been briefed by Lady Tsunade beforehand and knew what to expect. In another corner, Sasuke sat stiffly, visibly frustrated. That auto ninja possesses strength I need. Strength I must understand, he thought, his irritation growing. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't seem to replicate the blonde auto nin's abilities. Worse yet, when he used his Sharingan to observe her, everything seemed to blur and fade. Unbeknownst to him, This was due to a protective seal Jiraiya had placed on all auto shinobi years ago, designed to prevent their secrets from being stolen. I will uncover your techniques, Naruko. No one denies an Uchiha, he vowed silently. Behind a skeletal-themed mask, Natas watched with interest. The legendary warriors, Sub-Zero and Scorpion, had forged new identities, letting go of their past. His mission today, however, wasn't focused on Naruko. His gaze scanned the room until it fell upon Sasuke Uchiha, the target. He turned over the completed test paper he had been given, having used a swift technique to fill in the correct answers instantly. Yet his attention remained on the field. I am not allowed to interact with Naruko yet. But one day, her potential will be of great importance to my master, he thought to himself, silently anticipating what the future might hold. Throughout the examination, many candidates were disqualified for dishonest behavior. Ibiki, the proctor, remained composed and observant. His focus frequently returned to the blonde in the second row, seated next to the Hyuga heiress. The Hokage had instructed him to monitor Naruko closely and ensure her safety. He was quietly impressed when Naruko completed her test within the first 15 minutes. He also noted the shy interactions between her and the Hyuga girl, which left the latter with cheeks brighter than a summer apple. What could the Hokage be planning for you, Naruko? Ibiki wondered silently. He then announced the 10-minute warning, watching as more candidates were filtered out of the exam room. Still too many remain. Perhaps the final question will narrow them down a bit more, he thought with a slight smirk. As he chuckled quietly to himself, some of the younger participants appeared noticeably nervous, one even excused themselves early. All part of the process, he mused. Tsunade narrowed her eyes at Kakashi as they sat in the waiting room. Jiraiya and Anko remained close by, cautiously watching her. Stay away from my daughter, Hatake. This is your only warning, the blonde Sannin said sternly. I only wish to speak with her, the Konoha Jonin replied calmly. Many of the other Jonin around them were surprised. Not only by the intensity of Tsunade's words, but also by the fact that the famed copy ninja wasn't carrying his usual orange novel. I don't think so, Tsunade replied coldly. I recall what the Hokage told me years ago. Her father entrusted you to watch over her, to guide her. But hours after she protected this village and her parents were gone, you tried to harm her. You made your choice, Kakashi. You won't be given another opportunity. Before the situation could escalate, a grass Jonin interjected, clearly trying to lighten the mood. This is all very dramatic, but has anyone heard anything about the first exam yet? Asuma Sarutobi, lighting a cigarette despite several disapproving looks, replied, they'll be lucky to pass. Why do you say that? Kurenai Yuhi, another Jonin from Konoha, asked. Kakashi turned away from Tsunade to respond. You're still relatively new as a Jonin, so I'm not surprised you haven't heard. Heard what? Kurenai pressed. Asuma exhaled a thin stream of smoke and answered, the head proctor of the first exam is Ibiki Morino, head of Konoha's interrogation division. Several Jonin visibly flinched at the name, while others exchanged quiet glances. From the Auto group, a few seemed amused. Anko suddenly jumped when she felt something cool press into her palm. A tiny ice mirror appeared, and a note slipped into her hand. Her brow furrowed. Another one? She thought. The previous note had been a warning from Haku about Naruko alerting them to the presence of Sub-Zero and Scorpion within the exam. After reading the second note, Anko scowled and glanced toward the group of Konoha Jonin. Which one of you is mentoring a female Hyuga? Meanwhile, Naruko sighed. She was thoroughly bored. Suddenly, particles of sand gathered on her desk, spelling out a message. Do you need help? Shake head yes or no. Naruko gave a small shake of her head. Do you want to play a game? Naruko smiled faintly and nodded. The sand shifted, forming a tic-tac-toe board. With a light movement of her finger, she marked an X in the top left square. An O formed in the center. Naruko placed another X in the bottom left corner. An O appeared in the left center square, blocking her. She placed an X in the center right box to prevent a win. The sand answered with an O in the upper right. Naruko placed her final X in the bottom right square. Draw. The sand spelled out. Naruko gave a small shrug, smiling. Another game? Before she could respond, Ibiki's commanding voice echoed through the room. All right, listen up. It's time for the 10th and final question. The room fell silent. Here are the rules. If you take this question and fail, you will never rise above the rank of Jinan. What? Shouts and murmurs filled the room. A teen with a Ninken companion stood abruptly. You can't do that, he shouted. Quiet down, Iviki responded, his voice intense. This is my test. These are my rules. You may leave now if you wish, wait until another examiner offers a new test. Several participants got up and exited, forcing their teammates to leave as well. Naruko noticed the Uchiha's teammates growing visibly nervous, both on the verge of quitting. Outside, Kurenai looked visibly unsettled after her brief conversation with Anko regarding Hinata. She didn't like how easily she had answered the Auto Jonin's questions. So why did the three of you seem so confident? Asuma asked. Jiraiya replied with a hint of pride, Iviki is a master of mental pressure, but our students have endured incredibly tough circumstances. Some of them have faced things that most adults never will. Anko returned to her seat and smirked. Tsunade's team won't flinch. I bet that Gaara and Naruko are either resting or playing a game. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. As if your team's any less odd? Anko shrugged. As long as Ryu keeps moving forward, Haku and Tamari will probably walk across molten stone just to prove themselves to Naruko. Jiraiya chuckled. Poor Ryu. Those two are trying very hard to earn Naruko's attention. He clapped his hands once. But I have to say, my team's got something to prove too. If they quit before the others, they'll hear about it for the rest of their lives. Who are Naruko's teammates? Kakashi asked, glancing at the clock. I think I recognize the redhead. Kin was one of Naruko's classmates, she graduated with her and Ryu. They were known as the Never Say Die Trio, Tsunade replied. Gaara is the Kazekage's son, Jiraiya added. But due to various political and personal factors, he and his siblings are now part of our village. They were all carefully avoiding mention of Haku, Kabuto, or Ryu's complex connections to Konoha. Kakashi looked again at the clock. The exam should be ending soon. Iviki stood before Naruko. So, Blondie, he began. Planning to return to Oto already? Naruko stretched and yawned. Did you say something? I was about to nap while you finished sorting the committed from the uncertain. Iviki smirked. Still planning to stay? If you fail, you'll remain a Genin indefinitely. Naruko replied calmly, even as another team exited. Try me. My sister is more terrifying than this test when she's annoyed. And honestly, I'd like to see you enforce the Genin forever thing outside the walls of this village. Iviki noticed several Genin seemed less intimidated now. This child just undid hours of psychological pressure in moments, he thought. Naruko continued, even if I stayed a Genin forever, I'd still become the strongest one in the world. The kind that could outmatch any cage. So go ahead, ask your final question. Because Naruko Uzumaki Namikaze never backs down. That's my ninja way, never say die. Testify. Ryu and Kin shouted, grinning from their seats. The Oto team chuckled. Iviki remained composed but knew the test had taken a turn. Anyone else want to step down? He asked. This is your final opportunity. When no one moved, Iviki nodded. Very well, you all pass. Shocked gasps filled the room. What about the 10th question? Came a unified cry of confusion. Iviki began explaining as the room settled. The Chunin around the room smiled in satisfaction. Back in the waiting area, Anko spun a kunai by its ring and turned to Kakashi. So, who's handling the second exam? The Jonin all looked toward Kakashi. He sighed. It's not a ninja. The Hokage wanted a neutral party to prevent favoritism, so he contracted someone from outside the village. Who is it? Anko asked impatiently. Liu Yan, Kakashi replied. Jiraiya dropped his teacup. Did you say Liu Yan? Kakashi nodded, puzzled. Yes, why? Jiraiya's eyes widened. Liu Yan is also known as Liu Tung Pin, one of the 8 immortals in Taoist tradition. A legendary figure. He carries a sword to dispel malevolent forces. Tsunade furrowed her brow. Why does that sound familiar? Kakashi continued, more serious now. He's known as Master Pure Yang. Why someone of that stature is involved is troubling. Anko added quietly, I got a message from Haku before the exam started. Sub-Zero and Scorpion are here, along with a third unknown individual. They're participating, but they've been mysteriously altered in age. Who is this Natas? Kakashi asked, watching the Sannin carefully. A dangerous individual, Jiraiya replied softly. Tsunade looked uneasy. Do you think we can evacuate the kids before anything escalates? No, Anko said firmly. Naruko wouldn't run. And the rest will protect her. Jiraiya nodded solemnly. The second phase just became much more complicated. Inside the exam hall, the remaining teams looked at a scholarly man who appeared to have been celebrating before their arrival. You really couldn't have eliminated a few more, Ibiki? Lu Yan asked. Feel the tension in the room, Ibiki replied dryly. Lu Yan gave a dramatic sigh. They'll be down to half before my test ends. He took a sip from his gourd and waved a hand. All right, head to the forest of death. A Chunin will guide you. And where will you be? A bold Jinan asked. Lu Yan held up the gourd with a grin. Refill time. With that, he vanished in a swirl of water. Ibiki gathered the tests. When he reached Naruko's, he paused, reading a note she had left. This kid. I may try to recruit her someday. He went off to report to the Hokage, aware that the next stage would bring unforeseen challenges. The situation had clearly grown beyond what anyone expected. The forest of trials, Lu Yan said after sipping from his gourd of juice, though it smelled far stronger. Naruko listened carefully, though she only paid partial attention to the rules being explained, focusing more on the uneasy chatter among the Jinan, especially those from the Hidden Leaf. So unprepared, she thought. Did their teachers not warn them? I'm glad Mom, Pervy-sensei, and Uncle explained everything to us beforehand. Honestly, I'm grateful I'm not part of Konoha, they really do seem like a bunch of complainers. Naruko sensed one of her uncle's trusted protectors close by, Kimimaro. She knew he was keeping an eye on her. She exchanged a quick glance with Kin and Gaara. Kin motioned subtly with her eyes, drawing Naruko's attention to the Uchiha, standing arrogantly in a group of adoring fans and teammates. The smug look on his face only made Naruko more confident that their mission would be easy. Their posture, their attitude, no discipline. Even while appearing casual, she remained focused. Gaara nodded in agreement as Kin forged their names on the form like she'd done before. They stepped into the tent and took their scroll from Lu Yan, who eyed them thoughtfully. Be careful in there, the cheerful, slightly unsteady man said with a grin. We will, Naruko replied, tossing him a small flask. Some of Rice's best, non-alcoholic, of course. The man caught it, his eyes narrowing with recognition. We'll share a proper drink one day, he said warmly. Naruko smiled. Looking forward to it, sensei. She turned and followed Gaara and Kin to their gate. You smiled fondly as the blonde disappeared. You've grown a lot, Naruko. Stay safe. The next team arrived, and the gatekeeper clumsily handed them a scroll. You're looking well, Naruko. The blonde frowned slightly as she saw Sub-Zero and Scorpion flanking a masked figure. Natas? I'm not here for you this time, Naruko. Stay out of our way, he said calmly. You're the Uchiha? She asked, eyes narrowing. Sharp as ever. And how's the tailed beast? Resting. Almost completely integrated. My teacher updated the seal, so your plans are pretty much ruined. Natas's gaze sharpened behind his mask. No fighting before the exam begins. A Chunin instructor called out. Best of luck, Naruko, Natas added, walking away with his team. Naruko narrowed her eyes. Enjoy your walk. Somewhere far away, she muttered. Gaara gave a low chuckle while Kin playfully nudged her. You've really been spending too much time with Tuya. Gaara glanced sideways. Or maybe you just wish you were the one closest to her. Kin rolled her eyes. What would you know, sandboy? Gaara, a little more relaxed these days, shrugged. I know nearly every girl our age has a soft spot for Naruko, including my sister. Naruko blinked in surprise. She climbed into my window, I had nothing to do with that. And that's the only reason things didn't go worse, Gaara replied. We had a long talk afterward. Naruko gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. Alongside Temari, she was one of the few allowed to do that without provoking his sand. Sorry. Anko Ne gets a little protective. Kin snorted, remembering her own conversation with the fierce Jonin. It had taken both her and Haku to avoid getting overwhelmed, and even then, Kin wasn't thrilled about possibly sharing Naruko's attention. Here's our gate, Gaara said. They checked their watches, 40 minutes to go before the start of the exam. Wonder where the others will begin? Naruko asked, settling under a tree. Gaara smiled. Did anyone bring a map? They exchanged knowing looks. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Sarutobi sighed as he reviewed the reports. External factions were moving, And if what Tsunade and others had said was true, Natas posed a real threat. Not to mention the tensions rising from cloud, rain, and grass. He exhaled, looking at the cloudy sky beyond the window. The village was weakened when the legendary Sannin left. Sound has grown strong, not just through numbers, but through hearts. They've raised powerful shinobi. They even gained the children of the Kazekage, including one who holds a great spirit. Sarutobi frowned, remembering the council's old demands to seize control of the Jinchuriki. But it would never happen, not with Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru guarding her so fiercely. He thought back to Orochimaru's description of Naruko's kindness. Flashback. The one you should be watching is Kimimaro, Orochimaru had said. Tsunade and Naruko saved his life, but it was Naruko who saved his spirit. Sarutobi looked up. What do you mean? He came to end my life. A final mission. But Naruko found him collapsing from illness. She stayed with him. Talked to him. Listened to him. He woke up changed. Sarutobi listened intently. When he recovered, he came to confront me again. But Naruko stood between us. I won't reveal what was said, but from that moment, Kimimaro swore loyalty not to me, but to Naruko and Tsunade. Jirobo had stepped in, arms folded. All of Sound would stand for her. Yes, Orochimaru agreed. Konoha lost her long ago. She belongs with us now, and to take her would mean conflict. Not even your council can stop what would follow. End flashback. Sarutobi looked up at the monument. Minato, you saved this village once. But in doing so, we turned our backs on your child. And I fear. We don't deserve her anymore. Back in the forest, Naruko leaned against a tree while Kin rested her head in Naruko's lap. The blonde played a gentle tune on Kin's flute while the girl hummed quietly. You really are talented, Naruko-chan, Kin murmured. Thank you, Kin-chan. They looked up as someone approached. Uchiha, Gaara said quietly, eyes closed as he watched through floating sand. Sound girl, Sasuke muttered rudely. Naruko ignored him. So Kin, do you and Haku think you can handle Encode during the exam? Kin's eyes widened as Naruko smirked and gave her a playful wink. Her heart thudded as she felt a kiss land gently on her forehead. Don't ignore me, Sasuke shouted. Before he could act, a Chunin appeared. Uchiha, report to your gate. Your team is waiting. This isn't over, Sasuke hissed. You say something, duckhead? Naruko teased as she resumed playing. Each note seemed to match Sasuke's angry steps as he stormed off. Focus, Gaara said, standing and rolling up their map. It's time. Naruko helped Kin up with ease and grace. Kin blushed, her mind drifting again. She squealed quietly when Naruko gave her a teasing smile. Save your daydreams for after, Kin-chan. Gaara groaned. You just had to tease her. Naruko shrugged. Just having fun. Uro-sensei said to enjoy myself during the exam. You know they're all going to chase you eventually. You can't pretend not to notice forever, Gaara said. Tamari even said she wants to marry you. Naruko froze. And you're okay with that? Gaara nodded. I'd be proud to call you sister-in-law. Naruko blinked, speechless. Kin stirred and clutched Naruko's hand to her chest. No. I want to keep dreaming of Naru-chan. Naruko looked around nervously. Thank the heavens Mom and Anko-ne aren't here. They'd both freak out. He gently shook her shoulder. Kin-chan, we need to move. Anko will not be pleased if we're late. Kin bolted upright, clutching her spare flute as Naruko handed it to her. Let's go, she said, voice full of determination. As they dashed through the trees, the buzzer sounded, signaling the start of the second stage of the Chunin exam. That's a wrap for now, everyone. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Stay tuned for more from 6 Path Weeb.